391 species in genus Clematis. April 23rd, Clematis, Clematis, the climbing vine, represents April 23rd. Clematis stands for ambition and elegance. You are driven and graceful, always reaching for the highest goals. Like this vine, you add beauty and purpose to your surroundings. Clematis, a climbing obsession. My garden is my sanctuary, a place where I can lose myself in the beauty of nature. And among the many plants that grace my little Eden, Clematis holds a special place in my heart. These climbing wonders, with their vibrant blooms and graceful vines, have captivated me completely. Clematis, a member of the buttercup family, Ranunculaceae, is a diverse genus boasting over 300 species. They hail from all corners of the globe, though they're particularly abundant in Asia and North America. What unites them is their penchant for climbing, their delicate foliage, and most importantly, their stunning flowers. These blossoms come in a kaleidoscope of colors, from the purest white to the deepest purple, with countless shades in between. Some varieties even boast captivating patterns and unique shapes. A world of Clematis. The sheer variety within the Clematis genus is astounding. See full list at monsteraholic.com. Do deer eat Clematis? Absolutely, deer will eat Clematis. I've learned this the hard way. A few years back, I planted some gorgeous Clematis vines along my fence line, hoping they'd bring a splash of vibrant color to the yard. But then those pesky deer came along. They seemed to love those delicate blooms even more than I did. At first, it was just a few nibbles, but before long, there were only bare stems left. Nowadays, I either plant deer-resistant varieties of Clematis or use some kind of repellent spray to try and keep the deer away. Is Clematis poisonous to dogs? Unfortunately, yes, Clematis can be harmful to dogs. I haven't had a direct experience with my dog eating it, thank goodness, but I've always made sure to keep those pretty vines well out of reach. I did some research when I first planted them, because I know my furry friend is a curious chewer. From what I understand, Clematis contains a substance that can cause some nasty side effects for dogs, like drooling, vomiting, and diarrhea. Better to be safe than sorry, so I keep my pup away from the Clematis and stick to dog-friendly plants in his play areas. How to pronounce Clematis? The pronunciation of Clematis can be a bit tricky. I used to say Clematis, but then a gardening enthusiast friend gently corrected me. The most common pronunciation is Clematis. You emphasize that first syllable, and the middle syllable sounds like It's a beautiful word for a beautiful flower, but it definitely took me a little practice to get the hang of saying it right. When to cut back Clematis for winter. The timing for cutting back Clematis depends on the specific variety you have. It gets a bit confusing, and I used to mix things up until I made myself a little reminder chart. Some types don't need much pruning at all, while others benefit from a hard cutback in late winter or early spring. Last year, I made the mistake of not pruning back my late-blooming Clematis, and it ended up being a tangled mess with blooms way too high to properly enjoy. Never again. Do you deadhead Clematis? Yes, I usually try to deadhead my Clematis. It can be a little time-consuming, but it really does seem to encourage a second flush of blooms. Plus, I find it kind of therapeutic to spend a few minutes in the garden, snipping away those faded flowers and admiring all the new growth. Honestly, sometimes I get a little lazy later in the season, but I've noticed the plants that are regularly deadhead definitely perform better overall. How to grow Clematis from seed. I've tried a few times to grow Clematis from seed, but I'll admit, my success has been pretty limited. Those seeds can be finicky. It takes patience, which I'm not always the best at, and the germination rate isn't great. One year, I followed all the instructions, carefully planting the seeds and waiting, and nothing. But another time, I was rewarded with a few spindly sprouts. My biggest tip is to collect lots of seeds, because only some of them will actually sprout. I'm still working on mastering growing Clematis from seed, but I find it's a satisfying challenge. When to transplant Clematis. The best time to transplant Clematis depends on my climate and a bit on my tolerance for risk. Ideally, I like to move them in the very early spring, just as they're starting to show some green buds. The cooler temperatures and extra moisture in spring help the plant recover from the transplanting shock. But hey, life gets busy, and sometimes I forget. In a pinch, I've moved Clematis in the fall too, after it's gone dormant. It's not ideal, and the plant might take a little longer to establish itself, but it's usually okay if I get it done early enough. The key is to minimize stress on the plant whenever I can. Can clematis be grown in pots? Definitely. In fact, I love growing clematis in pots. I have a small patio, so containers let me enjoy these beautiful flowering vines without taking up garden space. I've found that certain varieties do particularly well in pots, especially the more compact ones. There's something so satisfying about seeing those gorgeous blossoms spilling out of a lovely ceramic pot. Plus, I can move them around to brighten up different spots on my patio throughout the season. Can clematis grow in shade? Yes, some clematis varieties can thrive in partial shade, but they're not all the same. I learned that lesson when I planted a sun-loving variety in a shadier corner of the garden. It grew all tall and lanky with barely any flowers. My neighbor, who has a gorgeous shady garden filled with clematis, gave me some great tips. She recommended varieties like the alpine clematis and sweet autumn clematis for those shadier spots. Now my once bare corner is filled with beautiful blooms, all thanks to picking the right clematis for the space. What do clematis seeds look like? Clematis seeds are quite interesting looking. They have a small, brown seed at the base, attached to a long, feathery tail. This tail helps the seed get carried by the wind to spread and plant itself in new places. Here's an image to help you visualize them. I find it fascinating how nature designs these seeds for dispersal. They're like tiny parachutes. Some clematis varieties have really long feathery tails, while others are shorter and stubbier. Do hummingbirds like clematis? Hummingbirds do sometimes enjoy clematis, although it's not their absolute favorite. Varieties with smaller, tubular-shaped flowers tend to attract them more than the ones with large, flat blooms. The color matters too. Red, orange, and pink shades can sometimes catch a hummingbird's eye. Here's why clematis isn't a hummingbird's first choice. Not all blooms are easy to access. Some clematis flowers have a shape that makes it a little difficult for the hummingbird to reach the nectar deep inside. Nectar production varies. Not all varieties of clematis produce the same amount of nectar. If you want to entice hummingbirds to visit your clematis, try planting varieties with these features. Smaller, tubular flowers. Brighter colors like red or pink. Do rabbits eat clematis? Sadly, yes. Rabbits do seem to find clematis rather tasty. I've had my share of battles with those furry little nibblers. They especially enjoy the tender new growth in spring, sometimes munching down the vines before they ever get a chance to really grow. It's frustrating, and it's made me learn to love chicken wire. A few years ago, I started surrounding my most vulnerable clematis plants with simple barriers, which at least seems to discourage the worst of the rabbit snacking. Is clematis poisonous to cats? Unfortunately, yes, clematis is considered toxic to cats. The whole plant contains a substance that irritates a cat's digestive system. While my cat doesn't usually bother my flowers, I'm still very careful to make sure any clematis I plant is out of reach. If cats eat it, they might end up with drooling, vomiting, or diarrhea. It's always better to be safe and keep our feline friends away from potentially harmful plants. Why is my clematis not blooming? The age-old gardener's question. Why won't my beautiful clematis bloom? I've definitely experienced this frustration myself. There are a few common reasons. Wrong pruning time. I made the mistake of pruning my early blooming variety too late in the fall, cutting off all those new flower buds. Always double-check the specific needs for your variety of clematis. Not enough sun. My first clematis ended up in a spot that got less sun than I thought. They really perform best with at least 6 hours of sunlight a day. Nutrient imbalance. Sometimes it's an issue with the soil. Too much nitrogen fertilizer will make lush leaves, but not enough blooms. Too young. Young clematis plants might need a couple of years to become established before they bloom reliably. It can take a little detective work, but figuring out why your clematis isn't happy often helps get those beautiful flowers back the next season. Do clematis like acid soil? No, clematis actually prefer a neutral to slightly alkaline soil pH. I always keep some lime on hand, just in case my soil is testing too acidic. Adding a bit of lime to raise the pH can make a big difference for my clematis. They seem to grow stronger and healthier, with more vibrant blooms, when the soil has a pH between 6.5 and 7.5. Do clematis like coffee grounds? While coffee grounds can be beneficial for some plants, they're not the best choice for clematis. Clematis prefer slightly alkaline soil, and coffee grounds are acidic. Adding a lot of coffee grounds to the soil around your clematis could shift the pH too far, making it difficult for your plant to thrive. It's generally better to use coffee grounds on acid-loving plants like blueberries or azaleas, and to stick with more neutral fertilizers for clematis.